So I think we've let everybody get into the webinar. We've got a nice international audience today. So welcome everybody. My name is Patrick McBride and I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at iSIGHT Partners. And I'm joined by Matt Hartley, who is the VP of Product Management at iSIGHT. And today's webinar is titled, What is Cyber Threat Intelligence and Why Do You Need It? And so we're going to try to answer 3 questions today. If Matt and I make our, get paid today, we have to answer these 3 questions. So the first one's on the screen. What is it and why it's important? But as importantly is, how specifically can it help you? What can it do for you in much more granularity than you can get out of a title slide? And hopefully in the way we'll go through this, I think we'll hopefully establish why we're the best in the market at doing this. We've been around the longest. We're really setting the stage, but we want to make sure that we can demonstrate all 3 of those things. A couple of ground rules before we go in. So, first of all, we'd love it if you guys would ask some questions as we go along. We will absolutely save some time at the end of our webinar today and be able to ask some questions or answer questions then. But if you ask them throughout, if we can try to weave them into the discussion, we'll do that. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll have a link available so we can send that to you at the end. We get asked that all the time, for folks who want to share this with friends or colleagues. And the last housekeeping item is apologies in advance for the jet noise. We are somewhat close to Washington Dulles International Airport, and apparently the flight path today is right overhead of my office. So it is what it is, and we'll try to be loud and make sure that you guys can hear us okay. So without further ado, let's just jump right in and just by way of introduction, you can see our mission statement up there and what we're trying to do. But I think the real key points to call out about iSIGHT Partners is we've been at this for nearly a decade. We've developed a huge historical database, a massive historical database about threats over a long period of time. And the way we do that is we've invested very, very heavily in our operational capacity, and we'll take you through a little bit of that specifically. We've got people all around the globe looking into the threat. The threat now is a global threat. You can't, the cyber threat folks or the cyber actors don't stop at the borders. They cross borders routinely. In fact, they use the borders as an advantage in many ways. So if you don't have people all around the globe collecting that information or able to get into the underbelly of these groups, then you really can't do what you need. So, so as we say here on the slide, 16 countries, we know 24 languages, and we have one unified mission. And the languages is important. It's not just people who have been trained, to understand Chinese or interpret, a different language, whatever. There's lots of them. But more importantly, we're in theater with people who are native speakers. So we've hired folks that are native speakers who understand the context, understand the colloquial language that often gets used in the underground, so that we can pick up things that would otherwise be missed by people who are just grabbing information maybe and translating it. So that's a quick overview. We'll dive into a little bit more detail about what we do and what we provide. But I wanted to start off the discussion here, and Matt's going to do the color commentary on some of the stuff. So all the things that I miss as we go through here, Matt will make sure that we get clarified. But starting off, some of the main challenges that we're seeing across security organizations. The top one's important. The CISOs are finding it difficult to communicate to boards in the way that they want to be communicated with, and that's become increasingly important. Anybody who followed the Target breach and the fallout from the Target breach, which was actually a board-level proxy fight, understands now that boards are really interested in this information. We get calls and requests all the time from people who are trying to brief their boards and want to know about the right way to go about it. In order to do that, you've got to be able to talk in their terms. So we'll talk about that. We're dealing with a vastly expanding surface area. So that's both the technical orientation of that. So things like mobile and cloud and other virtualization technologies have expanded the surface area that we need to protect by orders of magnitude. But also because of the way that we globally operate our businesses these days. There's supply chains that we have to deal with that stretch all the way around the world, sometimes twice. It's hard to prioritize when you're getting thousands or many thousands of alerts and events each day. It's hard to know which ones to actually pay attention to. And I think you can draw some, good information out of the target breach. I mean, there were clearly indicators and warnings that showed up on some of the technology, the target had in place. They just missed them. And so understanding how to, sort that out, and sort that information out, prioritize is important. And then the back half of that is, kind of an operational chaos. You've got all these alarms going off, and you're only staffed to, look deeply into some subset of those alarms. So picking which ones ends up being a very important part of what the security organization has to do these days. And to some extent, the tools that we have in place often don't help. That's starting to change. I mean, the tools are starting to get more intelligent, beyond some of the, old, signature-based systems into more, proactive systems. And a big way that that's happening is that they're integrating intelligence into them. We'll talk a little bit about that, but, there's announcements as recently as this week, where one of the other, big, players, it was Palo Alto this week, that started a small research team, to do, bring intelligence into their product, and I think that's, not detailed, global threat intelligence like we're providing, but, pulling, intel into their product. We've done work with Checkpoint, who's gotten very aggressive in that space to pull intelligence into their product. So it's becoming, just a part of what's going on in the industry, and we think we'll continue to see that. So what we're really in the game, what we were really trying to do, and we put our mission statement up there, what we're trying to do, and that's the nice corporate version of it. But what we're really trying to do for security teams is to change the game. I coach football in my copious spare time, and what if you're coaching at the upper level of the youth ranks all the way into college, university, or all the way up to the pro teams, there isn't, none of those organizations, none of those teams would go into the next week's game without scouting the opponent, knowing what kinds of plays they're going to run, knowing how they're going to try to attack you, come at you, building a game plan, communicating it to the team. Yet every day we're sending our cybersecurity professionals out to do battle with adversaries who they don't know who they are. They don't know what they're going to bring at them. They frankly don't even know what game they're playing. Is it badminton or volleyball today? Is it some combination of the both? So, there's a lot that needs to get done, and we created the company in order to be able to change the game and kind of turn the tables on the adversary. And a key piece of that is being proactive. We've talked about proactivity for years in cybersecurity, and that usually meant, if you really kind of stripped off all the marketing terms, that meant reacting quickly. I'll find out, what hit me, and we'll run and try to fix it. That was a level of proactivity, in essence, that most organizations had. With cyber threat intelligence, and we'll talk how, you can actually become, proactive if you integrate that into the operation. We talked a little bit on the last slide about shrinking the problem and improving prioritization, so it can certainly help you do that. That's one of the ways you can change the game. It can help extend the life of some of the technologies that you've already got in place, kind of pump new life into those technologies that a lot of organizations spend a lot of time, effort, and money implementing those technologies. Ripping them out and replacing them is a big, expensive effort, and not what everybody wants to do it. So if you can pump some intelligence into them in a really meaningful way, then it can really extend the life of investments that you've already made. Importantly, it can enhance communications with your business units, and very importantly, all the way up to the executives and the board level in the business, and really help you connect, the security operations that you're running to the things that matter to the business, and do it in a way that you can then communicate that. So those are some of the things that you can do. The good news is the industry analysts have caught on, and they've also, they're helping, I think, clarify the market, which we'll get to in a little bit, because there's a lot of confusion out there. In fact, I would go far. I've jokingly said when I came over to iSIGHT Partners and went to RSA conference again and started looking around, you couldn't get down one of the aisles at the RSA conference without seeing security intelligence all over the place. In fact, I jokingly said if you played a drinking game and took a shot every time you walked by a booth that had security intelligence in it somehow, you would end up being drunk by the end of the first aisle, and you'd have 20 more to go. So it's certainly become part of the buzz, part of the nomenclature, but it isn't necessarily perfectly well understood outside of a few leading edge companies. And so there's a real difference here, and what we wanted to bring up, and it's important to know that there's a difference between raw data or raw information and intelligence. And I let Matt hit some of these points.
Sure. So this is Matt Hartley. If a lot of people that are using or trying to leverage information or intelligence that's actually information, something that's being sold as intelligence that really is just a raw data feed, sort of creates a problem for a lot of their clients. I mean, what we've seen from our clients and from the market is when you get a huge swath of data, you end up creating a lot more work for your team just trying to go through and process and sort that. In fact, we'll have some upcoming blog posts about sort of stages of pain that a lot of folks have gone through to be able to actually get through that level of information. But on the sort of counter side, intelligence is actually processed. Intelligence is sorted, whether that's from a technology standpoint, or from a human standpoint. For it to be intelligence, it has to be something that has been verified, validated, and so forth. So similarly, that sort of moves us to the next point. A lot of cases, we see information being thrown out there that is really unevaluated or partially evaluated or algorithmically validated with semi-reliable capabilities. And to be intelligence, you have to have some level of interpretation and evaluation by those that are trained analysts. And again, this can be a human who's doing the analysis, or it can be a set of people that are trained in intelligence that build algorithms that generate highly validated data sets, or those are continuously evaluated as they move forward. Sort of moving there to the next piece, raw information tends to be sort of vacuumed. We sort of jokingly talk about folks that throw up millions of sensors all around the world and just sort of vacuum up everything that's out there and throw that at their clients. We sort of liken that to throwing haystacks at haystacks of data. And what we have to do there is really cull down the sources of information to the ones that reliably provide insight into the adversary and insight into what they're doing, and also that are filtered for the adversary's security actions and the adversary's sort of marketing and PR. There are lots of folks out there, threat actors in the underground that claim that they're going to make an attack but can't actually do it, just to generate buzz or to generate concern on their targets. And so having reliable sources and correlation amongst your sources is key for intelligence to be accurate. And then sort of that moves us to the next point, which is information is very difficult to leverage because because you're being forced to make judgments around that raw information. It's difficult to determine, is this true? Is this false? Is it incomplete? How does this relate to me? And so what intelligence offers is really a multifaceted view of the particular incident or threat that is sort of accurate, is complete, and it's been assessed for relevancy. And you want to do all of that in a timely fashion. And so that's one of the things that we hear a lot here at iSIGHT is, well, how do you guys or how are you able to work through all of these sort of facets in a timely manner? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but in essence, we have really boiled down the sort of best of breed processes used by intelligence professionals all around the world, and created a process, leveraging a technology stack that allows us to generate the accurate, timely, and complete intelligence that's relevant and tagged for our clients. Finally, information tends to be not very actionable. I think a good example there is, if you have a data feed, perhaps you might have a domain name, and maybe there's even some basic context there. That domain name is related to a particular cybercrime campaign, or related to Game Over Zeus or CryptoLocker or something like that. Typically what we see a lot with folks trying to use those is, okay, I know it's bad, but what do I do about it? And should I be concerned about it moving forward? And how do I go and mitigate this? Or do I need to mitigate this? Can I accept this risk? And so what intelligence offers is a larger, more rich context that allows you to make those determinations on how to act given that particular threat, whether it's tweak a rule all the way to change a business process in order to prevent some threat from being successful against your environment.
So what we thought we'd do is we call out some of what we're seeing as some of the issues. We'll talk about what some of the industry analysts, we've quoted them already. We've got a couple of kind of checklist things that the industry analysts are saying about data, because they've been looking at it deeply and analyzing that, so it's kind of useful. So things that we're seeing in terms of some of the issues that we're finding is, the first point here is some of it is really not intelligence, it's actually information, and we just went through that. We've got a lot of folks that are focused, there's some folks in the market that are focused on their particular geography, and since the bad guys don't look at geographical boundaries at all, the internet is without geography boundaries, with a couple of notable exceptions. You end up having to have a real global perspective to be able to work and track everybody wherever they are. Some, the vendors, or many of the vendors that are delivering intelligence we say looking in the rearview mirror, and by that we mean that they're taking the stuff that has hit the attack surface area through some of the surface protection tools, or taking data from what they've done in a forensics investigation, for example, and that can be important information. Absolutely, and in some ways it can even be good intelligence, but it's not all the intelligence. It's just what's hitting today, or what hit yesterday, or last month, or last year. It's not what may hit in the future. So this proactive view and a proactive stance in figuring out what's coming next ends up being tremendously important to have rich data. And then Matt called into this a little bit deeply, but if you don't have the human, you need really, really good tools to do this. I mean, we've invested a huge amount of money in building out what we call our technology stack internally. We're calling it TIP now, right? Yep. That's
our intelligence platform, we call the ThreatScape Intelligence Platform.
ThreatScape Intelligence. The marketing guy should know the answer to that, right? But the ThreatScape Intelligence Platform, we've invested lots and lots of money into that, because you have to do this with tools. You get such volume data, but you've got to also have humans look over through this, either develop the algorithms, tune them, or most importantly, look over some of the intelligence or look over some of the information and actually turn it into intelligence. We're in Chantilly, Virginia, which is our fusion center, where all of that happens. So all the intelligence that comes in globally, gets processed here and turns into finished intelligence that we send out to our customers. So Gartner had what I think is it hits a really bunch of good points. There's I think a very strong and very accurate definition of what cyber threat intelligence is, and there's a couple of watchwords that we've already started talking about. Evidence-based. That means you're validating it. And you're looking at it through people lenses. You're not just grabbing data. Has context, and when we say context, and we'll go through this a little bit more, it's it's a lot of aspects. It's not one thing or two things. I'm going to save the context discussion for a little bit. We've got some slides on it that'll give you exactly what kind of context that advanced intelligence would include. But some of those are indicators, technical indicators. But more importantly than that, it's stuff above the indicators. Again, I'm gonna hold that for a moment. But you have to make it, into intelligence so it can be actionable advice. So that's a key, piece of it. And it's got to be able to be used in a way that you can make decisions off it, not so that it causes you more analysis yourself. The last thing that most of the CISOs tell us that they have is additional people to throw at the problem. Most of them don't have the number of people that they need to take care of the problem in the security team. Most of them would like more. So. And we're not here as staffs, doubling and tripling for the most part. So, having intelligence that's actually actionable right away versus having a bunch of information that you got to cull through and make the inferences yourself ends up being really important. And this is really what it boils down to. If you want to, we've got our little needles and here Matt used the haystacks on haystacks. What we try to do is figure out which of those needles is going to poke you and pull it out and tell you, what it is rather than raw data. So, context rich, as we said, it includes some of the items that we've got here in terms of the linkages, and we've got some nice graphical ways to show that in a couple of slides here. Taking a different look, so we got a Gartner take on it. Forrester has another interesting take on it as well. And I think, in order to be useful, is a way to start the discussion. Intelligence needs to be actionable, and here's what actionable is. There's a very good blog out. Rick Holland wrote a good blog sometime before the RSA USA conference this year, and he hearkened to an old set of commercials that used to run here in the United States about a linebacker who would tackle people in the office as they said some stupid corporate speak or something. And Rick Holland was saying that at RSA they ought to let this Terry Tate character loose, and anybody who doesn't have a good have real actionable intelligence should get tackled. So it's absolutely worthwhile. It's got a nice little video up there of Terry Tate tackling people, so fairly humorous. But he goes through a nice list. It's accurate. For us that means you have to have a really good process to go through this stuff, and we'll take you through what our process is. It's got to be aligned and tailored to your requirements. Our process absolutely includes bringing your specific requirements into it, and we'll talk to you about how we do that. It's got to be integrated with your technology. If it only came in a set of PDF reports, which we do provide, then it isn't as actionable as it needs to be. It might have the intelligence in the report that can be actionable, but given the amount of things that we face in any given day, it's got to be actionable at machine speed. It's got to be machine-to-machine kind of stuff so that you can block or prioritize, at a machine speed level. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Predictive, I think he hits. It's got to be forward-looking. You can't be rear-view mirror in it. It's got to be looking ahead. Relevant means it's got to have specific information, not just general threat information, but specifically what sectors are being targeted, what kind of adversaries you're facing.
Yeah, and on that too, I would say, not just focused on your industry, but focused on your geography.
Right.
And there's other sets of metadata that you can use to make it more relevant.
And Matt's fond of reminding me that the threat that may be hitting Singapore today may be hitting your geography or your sector next month. So it's important, and just because it isn't hitting your sector today, it might be tomorrow. And that actually kind of brings you into real time delivery. If we're looking at it in real time, 7x24, to pick up on those shifts in what adversaries are doing and be able to push that out. So at the end of the day, this is the two sets of products. We've got a set of subscriptions that we can provide that are really the core of our offering. We call them ThreatScape, and they're broken up primarily by adversary motivation with a couple of other things. So we've got cybercrime, cyber espionage, and hacktivism, which are very motivation focused. In enterprise, we end up talking about, we roll that information up and provide information that's going to be useful to the CISO, the CIO, and even the executive management team. But we also layer on other things that affect the cyber threat landscape. Things like geopolitical activity, things like laws and regulations that are hitting, for example. So we try to roll that all up into a bundle for a particular audience. Obviously, critical infrastructure is increasingly important, so that's a focus area too, where we're looking at what might be attacked. It's not a motivation side, but it's the target of attack. So we're digging into that. And vulnerability and exploitation with that service, we go a lot further than anybody else. So there's a lot of good, to give credit where credit due. There's a lot of good vendors out there that can provide good vulnerability information. They're staying on top of that. We do the same. We've got an excellent team in here reviewing and analyzing that. We get some zero-day information as well. And what we do that we think is unique is provide a ranking on how critical that vulnerability is, based not only on kind of traditional measures. Is it easy to exploit? Is it remotely exploitable? Does it take a rocket scientist to build a tool to figure it out? That's a piece of the equation and an important piece. But the flavor that we add is, since we're looking at the adversaries and what they're trying to do, we add to that how easy are there tools in the wild? Are they being developed? Are they going to be developed? Are they there today? That sort of stuff. And that really changes the ranking of one of our vulnerability reports. Very often you'll see in a lot of the rankings, you'll see a lot of these vulnerability reports are coming out with high or critical. That gets you into a fairly big issue. If everything's important, then nothing is really important, right? I mean, it's really hard to prioritize when everything's important. If you can put a rank that's based on when you're going to see this thing actually exploited by people, then you can do your patch management processes and things like that. So that's kind of a run through the ThreatScape services. We've also got a set of other services that we can provide to clients, both on the front end and on an ongoing basis. So with the threat diagnostic, a lot of our clients don't have a really good understanding of what attacks are actually facing today, what attacks they may be facing in the future. And so we can do a consultative project where we take take data from their log files in a very big and meaningful way, process that, match it up with our historical database, and give them a very, not a theoretical perspective of what they're facing, but the actual perspective of who's hitting them, what the motivation is, et cetera. And that can inform a lot of things. It can inform investment decisions. It can inform the board and the executive management team in not only what to invest in, but how much, that sort of thing. The intelligence integration services, we've got a range of clients from the most sophisticated threat intel teams on the planet in large financial services organizations and some government organizations, right down to folks who are just starting to build out a team, just starting to have even a small security team that they're trying to optimize. So the intelligence integration services can work with the range of those customers and help them implement best practices and really meet them where they're at. If you're pretty immature, they can help you to get to the next level or the next two levels over time, build out a plan that you can run to both across people, process, and technology. We get called back by even some of our most mature customers, to help tune what they're doing and just take an independent look at it and help them up their game. So it's either build their game out or help even more folks that are further along the path build it up. And a breach diagnostic is kind of the flip side of a threat diagnostic. Once if you've had a breach, if you've had an incident, it's leveraging our historical database, of nearly a decade, bouncing up some of the indicators, the information that you're seeing based on the forensics investigation you're doing, and figuring out a couple things: A, who and why. You found some indicators, you found some lures. What kind of campaigns are they associated with? Are they hitting you specifically? Are they a broad-based campaign where they're going after everybody and you just kind of got caught up in the wash? Are they targeting your specific category? Who's doing it? Are there other things that they're going to throw at you, or they maybe already threw at you, that you should go and pivot and look for that you might not have picked up in your forensics investigation, things like that. So breach diagnostic is a great companion to a forensics investigation, where we can fill in the who, what, why, and maybe other things that they may be trying. Did I miss anything, Matt?
No, I think you hit it on the head.
All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. This gives you some sense of the ThreatScape deliverables. So, we provide intelligence on a daily basis. Basically, we produce nearly 100 reports, right around 100 reports across all of the different ThreatScapes. We're going to talk about our process here in a little bit, and what you shouldn't pull out of that is, although it's a very deep and process, it's a very optimized process, and we produce stuff on a very rapid basis and get that information out. We produce something called the ThreatScape Media Highlights, in addition to putting out the ThreatScape reporting. The Media Highlights has been candidly surprisingly important to our customer base. We launched that this year, and we had a lot of CISOs at our annual customer event, and to a T, every one of them told us how important that has been in their operation. They use that what it is a daily review of the key stories in the press, whether it's big business press or down to the trade press, about security events that have happened, and we provide analysis on top of that. Is it true? Is it not true? What's going on? And we actually point you to the different reporting where we've done deep dives on that particular thing in our intelligence holdings. And they've used that to notify and inform their business users, to be able to answer questions that they're getting inbound. What they were telling us is, somewhere between 15 and 25% of their time is just answering questions from folks in the business. And so that was, even more helpful than we ever thought it would be, as we put it out. It's always nice to be surprised by something that you add. It's important, you can get all of our information through our portal, but you can also get it through our API and some of the out-of-the-box integrations that we've done, and we'll talk a little bit about more of those in the end. A really important differentiator for us is we have a very well-staffed team and a very a dedicated set of client engagement managers who can work with each client on the front end to make sure that we understand your intelligence requirements, and they get into our into our process, and we're starting looking at some of the specific things that you want to be, us to focus on. But those folks are also the team that navigates you through any analyst inquiry that you might have. You might have some clarification on a particular report we come out. You might have some malware that you want us to analyze and dig into and figure out who's doing it, or have we seen it before, and that sort of thing. Or are there are the companion things that they ought to be looking out for. We can do one-off deep customized reportings in a couple of different layers. The threat investigative reports or the focused intelligence reports that answer different kinds of questions at different depths for you. So that's a part of what we can offer in there as well. But the important thing in there is we're staffed to handle those inquiries. They're not an added cost, and they're not, you hope you're going to get to somebody, that's actually going to be able to answer your question. You'll get to the right expert in a timely manner and get an answer to your question.
I think one of the great things about that is when we get a question from a client around a particular topic area, it's routed to our team of experts in that area. So say it's a hacktivism question, that goes to our hacktivism team, and because they're following hacktivist threats, typically they have the answer very quickly. So in many cases we're able to respond rapidly, which is how we're able to have a service like this that we don't have to charge for.
Yeah. So how do you provide actionable, context-rich intelligence? And the answer is simple. You have a process that supports that. So we break it up into collections, and we say we've got a global team out there that is in the underground and in theater, looking at all the different realms of cyber threat and keeping track of that on a day-to-day basis, 7 by 24. The front end of that process, we talked about the feedback and clarification loop there, which is getting information from clients and integrating that in, so that informs. We're out there looking for specific stuff on our own, but the client requirements also inform what we're collecting. If you collect a bunch of data, that's interesting, but it's not really interesting until you analyze it with a set of tools and human intelligence on top of that, and turn that into really finished intelligence that we can push out to our customers. And as we talked about, there's a couple of different ways that we can disseminate that information. So it would be easy to read this process, as I said before, as long and slow. It mirrors what you might have seen at a top level, in really structured intelligence organizations around the globe, and maybe some government organizations. What I can assure you is that it is optimized for commercial speed, and we turn out stuff, a lot of very good intelligence in a very quick period of time.
I think one of the key things here that we've sort of highlighted a couple times is that if you don't have those steps in the analysis sort of portion of this process, where you're taking all that raw information and fusing it into intelligence and really looking at checking your sources, ensuring their validity, really understanding the motivations and intents of a particular actor behind a particular threat, you're not able to blow out the level of context that you would need to appropriately act on that in a lot of cases.
So the actual right way to look at this picture is it's a circular thing. It's easier to show linearly, but this is a process that goes on 7 by 24 here at iSIGHT Partners, and it's an ongoing process. It's probably the right way to characterize it. And that looks cool as a build, right? I mean, that's part of the thing. So we've talked a little bit about the difference between threat data feeds and what actual intelligence is, and we wanted to put a little bit of a graphical spin on that, because I think that a lot of us think in terms of pictures and images, and it's an important enough thing that we wanted to put some elbow grease behind. So a standard threat data feed often has a piece of data that they're pushing out. It may be a bad piece of malware by through an MD5 hash or any number of different hashing techniques. It may be an IP address or a domain that's a known bad, it's a command and control domain, et cetera. Often those things have a narrow collection focus. They're looking at a particular area, maybe cybercrime, maybe a hacktivism thing, but not necessarily looking across the whole landscape. There often is little validation or analysis on top of that. The end result is you end up having a high noise to signal ratio, or the other way to say it is, if you integrate it into your technology, you end up with a bunch of false positives. Having a bunch more alarms is not what I've heard any of our customers say that they would like to have. They'd like to have fewer and understand which are the most important ones. So it's hard to prioritize when you don't have the context to do it. If you're collecting, in lots of different ways across lots of different things, which are the straws at the bottom here, if you're using lots of different sourcing for your information in lots of different places, you can roll that up, and then when you when you go through the analytics process, you create our buckyball here, which is a metaphor for our context-rich, multifaceted, high fidelity intelligence. And if you do that, you end up having highly actionable stuff. But so what is what's in there? What's actually in there? In the intelligence that we provide, we're providing the who and what. What actors are involved. What groups, are there government sponsors involved in that or not? Why are they doing it? What's their motivation, intent? What are they trying to go after? What's the time frame? Have they already launched a campaign in another geography and they're likely to do the same in a different geography, et cetera? What's their capability? Matt talked about this earlier, but it's not just what their motivation and intent, but can they actually pull it off? I'll let Matt tell the spin up, spin down story because I think it's a really effective way to do that.
Sure. So we actually have clients who have gone through scenarios where talking about sort of spin down. I had a client who noticed online a particular threat actor was threatening that they were, and this is a Friday, here in the U.S., and they were threatening or they saw a threat actor online basically threatening they were going to attack their company with a DDoS over the weekend. And so the particular client started spinning up their security team. They were planning on working over the weekend, getting everything ready. Sent us a note and said, hey, we noticed this. What is this? What can this actor do? What can we do to prepare? Can you expand upon all of the intelligence you've already written around that particular threat? And we basically were able to write back very quickly and say, that guy is great at PR, but he can't do a thing. So don't worry about it. Have a good weekend.
Like they say in Texas, big hat, no cattle.
Right.
It's you can't pull it off. So there's a way. There's a lot of good things. Certainly, it saved them. It was a large financial institution, I believe.
Yeah.
It saved them a lot of money in overtime, but frankly, it saved them more in morale.
Yeah.
Not having to come in on the weekend and sit there and not actually have something happen is probably as important to the security team in a morale sense as it was in the cost saving sense. So.
Absolutely. And then I think the counter example, the sort of spin up example is, we were working with, we were monitoring some threats in the underground, and there was a group of actors that were going to launch again a DDoS attack, and were essentially voting on who they were going to target next. And one of our government clients actually was in the list. And so while we were observing this vote taking place, we were able to call and spin up our government clients so that they were able to begin to prepare their DDoS mitigation capabilities, et cetera, so that when the attack actually did occur, and they did end up being voted to the top of the list, when that attack occurred, it wasn't successful because our client had the time to be able to prepare for that attack. They were able to know that it was coming, and they had the context, from the intelligence we had previously written around that particular set of actors to be able to really understand who is targeting them and why.
Yeah, and that, folks, is proactive. I mean, that's the very definition of proactive. Not I started getting my tail kicked on a DDoS attack and I reacted really quickly, which is some of the stories you hear out there, unfortunately, in the vendor community. So the other piece here is not just the why and the when and the motivation capabilities, but how they're doing it. So their techniques and methods, the playbooks, so to speak, that they're using to come after people. That's important in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk to them in just a second. So yes, are we getting threat data out there? We're absolutely doing that. We grab, we've got a lot of automated ways that we're pulling threat data, but we're decorating that data with the context that you need to turn it from data or information into true intelligence, and hopefully that picture gives you the thousand is better than 1,000 words. So just to finish the analogy here a little bit, or just give you a real specific understanding of it, there's a lot of folks that are doing IP reputation type feeds as an example. So they find a bad IP address. We do the same thing. We find a bad IP address. They may be able to give you a ranking. It's bad on a scale of 1 to 100. Not sure exactly what you do with that. I guess 100's worse, so you block those first or harder or something. But if you get a bunch of 55s in there, I'm not sure if you know what to do with them. You might even get a geolocation. Very often that's a last hop geolocation, which, by the way, any adversary worth their salt is going to take lots of different hops. So they're only the really bad, only the, I was going to say bad guys The guys that aren't good at being the bad guys, the amateurs are the ones that are gonna get caught up in that, where that might be important. On the other hand, we're going to be, we can tie it back to the actor group, the motivation, what targets they're doing, and as Matt said, with the spin up, spin down, really their ability to execute. We can find additional IP addresses that they might have used in prior command and control campaigns or domains and things that they're using in that scenario, or other malware, other phishing lures, that they've used in prior campaigns. So now you can get proactive. You can add this, this whole collection of stuff to your, proactive defenses, or make sure that you're looking for them in your SIM so that you can pop these kinds of things right to the top.
Or, in addition, if you're an incident response team and you're dealing with a potential incident, and you connect to, intelligence with this level of context, you're able to immediately pivot to the other sort of technical indicators or observables for that particular actor or campaign, and hunt for those inside your environment. So you can sort of make sure, if you have multiple incidents that are related, that you understand that, but then you can also attempt to make sure that you really run to ground all related potential aspects of that incident.
Excellent. I missed a build here. So we've got, we can provide even more information than we should. So vulnerabilities, that they're targeting, that gives you some context for which to patch first. Historic campaigns, successful compromises. That's interesting. That's an easy one to wash over. But if you're starting to talk to your executive team, if you're giving the information to your chief information security officer, so they can go brief, the CIO or the CEO or even the board. If you're now talking about campaigns, from specific actors that you've blocked, and other places that they've been successful, and by that we mean victimology and other people they might have attacked. We stopped this, and these guys got hit by it, is a pretty compelling story in terms of providing or showing the ROI for your security program and the investments that you've made, not just in threat intelligence, but your overall security program. So this gives you a little bit of a breakdown of the intelligence. So we make it consumable, if you will, for lots of different people. So we've got an executive summary attached to our intelligence so that when you go have that conversation at the executive levels, you've got, it's written in a way, that you can peel off that piece and leverage it. We provide that deep level of context that we talk about, which is all the linkages, who's linked to what actor group, what campaigns, et cetera, historical stuff, et cetera. And then the base level data, the hashes or the bad IP addresses that you might want to look for. We push that stuff out through both our portal, where you can search it, the historic holdings. We push it through email and SMS. In the portal, you can set all that stuff up and get PDFs of the reports, which are useful. But it's also very useful that we push that out through our API so that you can push that into your various different technologies. We support a number of standards there. In fact, we've been on the forefront of that and contributed some of the code or some of the schema to the STIC standard, for example. So we've been, we continue to be a good citizen there, and we had some that actually was helping them make their STICs standard more context rich, so that they could leverage this kind of intelligence. So, and then obviously we've talked a little bit about it. There's all kinds of consumers for that information, whether they're people or machines that end up being the consumers behind that. Wanted to give you kind of a functional, if you will, view of this and kind of how threat intelligence, this is answering the, I get what and why it's important, but, kind of how can it help you? And there's different slices depending on the way you look at this. So in no particular order, you've got things like governance, risk, and compliance. A big piece of that, is reporting on how patched your systems are. I mean, that's not the only thing GRC tools do, of course, but that's one of the ones that gets widely used. Well, in this, in this scenario, using intelligence, especially real intelligence that's actionable, if you've got not only what vulnerabilities are out there, but which ones are likely to get exploited or are going to be exploited, rapidly, that could really help you set your patch prioritization in a much more meaningful way, rather than I've got a bunch of critical or high or critical vulnerabilities that I've got to take care of. Here, that's an expensive process. It's time consuming, and if you can put something into the 30 or 60-day cycle that doesn't need to be patched right away, and then spin everybody up and focus on get it patched until it's done for one that we say is truly critical, because there's, easily exploitable, and there's a tool out there that's actively, going after it. That's just a whole different, level of context. On the infrastructure protection side, so whether it's your gateway devices or your firewall devices, et cetera, you can block, and I like to say block with confidence. If you're blocking and it's an unvalidated data set, you're going to be getting lots of alarms and stuff like that going off, but more importantly, you might block something that you don't want to be blocking, and that's kind of the that's actually most of the firewall guys' fears. They don't like to turn on blocking that much because they don't always rely on the they find it hard to rely on some of the data that they've got in there, or the signatures they got in there. If you get a false positive and turn Google off, or turn a link to a big a CRM system that may be a hosted CRM system, or something like that, all of a sudden you get a lot of phone calls from the business saying what the heck's going on. And but if you can if you've got a highly validated data set, you can block the stuff with confidence and really enhance your protection. And as Matt said, you can use data, pivot through other stuff, historical holdings, and find out other things that you ought to be blocking that maybe you aren't blocking today. On the SIM side, that's the back end of this, is your, and the big value there, the activity is prioritizing the events. If you're getting hit with stuff, alarms are going off, and that a particular, signature lit up, or a particular indicator fired on, one of your devices, and it's associated with an active campaign that is targeting your industry, you can write rules to push that to the top of the list. Again, most of our clients have a situation where they're getting far more events and alarms than they have people to look at them. And so if you can push the really important stuff to the top of the list, that becomes, really valuable by, shrinking the problem down for them. On the incident response, side of things, it's as Matt was, taking us through, it's, being able to analyze the incidents in much more granularity and hunt for other issues. A lot of times you might not have found, you pulled on the string in forensics, and the incident response team figured out that, what you saw, but you didn't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily on your infrastructure or through your logs connected with something else. It might be another set of lures or another set of command and control, some malware that's on there communicating with the different CNC infrastructure that you might not have seen. So using that in IR and forensics ends up being, really important to make sure that, you can improve the decisions, figure out who's attacking to you, and who's maybe attacking you, why they're attacking, and, frankly, figuring out, did you find everything? So hopefully that gives you a bit of a spin on intelligence from a functional perspective across the security organization. Really the ones that don't show up on here, and I need to change, I need to change the slide and add it in. It's really not an API level thing, but if you take a look at some of the reporting that we're doing, the other use case here is the security, the head of the security, group certainly can use information that you get, whether you're, you can tell them that you blocked, N number of pieces of malware, and that's one thing to tell the board, or you can tell them you blocked a particular campaign that 4 of your competitors got hit by. That's a whole different level, as we started to talk about before. That's a whole different level of communication, and that's the kind of communication boards want to hear about. That really can shine the ROI flashlight on the security program. So one of the things that you end up having to do, with intelligence, the Gartner's written a lot about this machine-to-machine, integration. I think they've done a nice job with that. And if you just got stuff through a portal and you had to read it all, one at a time, you just can't work fast enough. So, it's really not only integrating it functionally, but functionally each of these departments or groups have different tools that they use. So, we've got both the integrations that we have today that are already done. These are out-of-the-box integrations, and some that we're working on. Actually, the list of ones we're working on is far greater than that. This is just the ones that are closer in that we're, finishing up on. But we've done, we've got out-of-the-box integrations here, but we also have the API, that's and the documentation. Nearly all security tools these days, modern ones anyway, relatively modern ones, can integrate data into them. So even if we haven't covered it yet, it's typically, something that you could do, or we could help you do, and we're obviously keeping, who drives the list of integrations we do? That's simple. It's our customers. So I think, when you take a look at what sets us apart, from some of the vendors, we've got forward-looking, high-fidelity, insights that are adversary-focused, and they're actionable. So we provide, true intelligence that's actionable. We provide that information in a way that's suitable for multiple different parts of the organization. So it's not, from the, the technical level into your technology all the way up to your C-suite. As we've tried to create and craft the reporting that we do in that way so that it's easy for you to leverage that information. We've got a truly global intelligence presence, and Matt mentioned it earlier. We've also invested heavily not only in that part of the operation, but also in our technology stack, our TIP stack. That's something that our customers don't see today, but they certainly see the results of it. The ability for us to process and analyze through the mountains of information that we get and then turn it into actionable advice. If you haven't made those investments, you just can't churn that stuff out. We talked a little bit about the localized research, teams, being able to get into the underground places that you couldn't sit back here, from an office in Chantilly and get involved in, but then also having the colloquial local language understanding to know exactly what they're saying so that you can pick up the real nuanced, part of the discussion and then use that, as a data point that you can turn into intelligence. We've got a massive historical database that is really important, for our clients. It also it's not just important that you can go back in and search. It gives us insights. It's if we are looking at a particular threat, and we talked a little bit about one of the industry analysts the other day. It may be a situation where very early on that particular actor wasn't very good. They didn't hide their trail really well. They got into various different underground forums using their real name or something that's easy to attach to their real name. And then over time they got smarter. We call that in the business OPSEC, operation security. So they apply better OPSEC and get smarter and change their name and change their handle and over time. But if you've got a historical database, you can follow that actor over a longer period of time. So you may see a new thing crop up and know that it's attached back to that same actor or the same actor group. And it's less important that you're attaching it to the guy at the keyboard. You attach it back to the group that's got the same motivation. And the last piece here is the comprehensive API and out-of-the-box partner integrations that we just talked to. If we had all this good stuff, but we couldn't get it to you in a way that you can do it, make that machine-to-machine connection, you wouldn't be able to use it in any really meaningful way. So with that, we've got a couple questions that we'll take here. We'd love to have more. We've got to save a couple minutes as we promised here at the end. So by all means, you can just type questions right into the question box here on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll answer it. The first one is kind of an easy one. What kind of clients? We talked about financial services, I guess, and what kind of industries are we supporting in our client base?
I can take that one. So we, right now we are very strong in the financial and the government space. We have clients in a number of sectors, from energy to manufacturing to technology, retail, consumer goods, sort of a wide swath, both here in the U.S. and around the world, and that just continues to grow.
So the next one we have, and I'll take a stab at this one, is what's the pricing for your product? And so the two answers to that, we've got the ThreatScape services, which are they can be customized, but they're pretty much well-defined things that we do, and depending on the length of the engagement that we do, we've got different price points, and it also takes a look at the amount of data that we're going to have to analyze. And that kind. So it's not unlike a traditional services project. It depends on the length and size of the engagement and the work that we have to do. On the ThreatScape side, we price that we've got a tiered pricing model that goes up to the largest one price for the largest enterprises down to something that takes us well down to the mid-market. So we've got a price point that fits both the value that we're providing, frankly, but also fits the pocketbook of the customers that aren't large. We've got a number of the globally largest banks in the world, and they use our intelligence in a very meaningful and deep way. But we've also got some smaller clients who aren't using it nearly as globally, as an example. So we've got a tiered model that we can work with you on. Let me take a second for see if we get any other questions here. We've got a couple. Let's see. We had a hand raised earlier. I think let me check that out. And we'll take a second. It looks like we've hit the couple of questions that we've had so far, Matt. Any others that we typically get that put you on the spot for?
No, I mean, I think overall, I think one of the key things that that we've sort of talked through today that I think has been very beneficial for folks in the past to really understand is that level of context. I mean, it does go back to that last slide we had where we showed clients that were clearly frustrated with a data feed that gave them a score, like you sort of implied, like a 6. Okay, well, what does that mean? So now I know it's a 6. What do I do with it? And having the context associated with that particular data is really important. And I think we talked about it some today. I think we could talk for hours about it. If you look at our blog, for example, we've posted quite a bit of on there about how it's useful to have that context, how each aspect of that context is useful. For example, how is motivation and intent useful? How do we tie that to campaigns? How do you track campaigns? You also alluded to earlier why should I care about this threat if it's hitting Singapore or wherever in the world? And we clearly see continuously actors moving from launching attacks in a vertical or in an area in one part of the world, immediately turning that with very minor changes against other sectors and other geographies. And so just staying on top of those particular threats and those particular actors, understanding what they're trying to do and how they're doing it, allows you to really move from reactive to proactive. So those are the kind of things we've covered today, I think, that are typically asked.
That's excellent. So hopefully we earned our pay today. We promised we'd tell you what it is and why it's important. Hopefully we hit that. How you can specifically use it, to help your organization. Hopefully we broke that down functionally for you after that. And hopefully we explained to you why we think pound our chest here a little bit, why we think we're the best in the industry at doing that. We've certainly made the investments over nearly a decade to be here. I'm frankly the first VP of marketing at iSIGHT Partners because the firm spent the first big chunk of time making sure that they could produce a process and a team and a technology stack that helped them do this. And it wasn't until they did that they really wanted to turn it on and turn it up in a big way. We got lots of the early sales because people knew we've got a very known set of people at our organization to people in large financial and government kinds of organizations. So they sought us out. So but now we've really turned up the heat. One other point is there is a webinar or a white paper. It's really more of a brief out there. I think it's now on our homepage. There's a banner on the homepage that talks about what is cyber threat intelligence and why it's important. So you can grab that asset, share it with any of the folks in your organization or beyond. And as we said, we'll get a link to this webinar. We recorded it, and we'll push it back to you in case you want to review anything or you missed something. And certainly you can share that with your friends and colleagues. I don't think your family's going to care, but you can definitely share it with your friends and colleagues. And with that, we'll thank you. So good evening to the folks that are in those time zones, and have a great afternoon to everybody else. Have a wonderful weekend, and we look forward to seeing you on the next iSIGHT webinar. Take care.